Hi, my name is Perry. I'm from Tellico Plains, Tennessee, and the video I'm making today for you is called Typical Traditional Appalachian Musical Instruments. Typical meaning these are the type of instruments that we would generally expect to be found in a normal household. Of course, when I say typical, that's what I'm going to define as typical, based on the region of the Appalachian um, mountains. It can be depending on the economic condition of the cities and the families. But generally, this is what we expect to find in the homes. And I'm surrounded by instruments. I'm not an expert at playing all these instruments. Some of them I hardly ever touch, but I know enough about them to give you an idea of what they sound like. I'm going to start first with the guitar. And guitar is relatively inexpensive for most families to have. And they have 6 strings, and we can strum what we call chords on them. And we can play individual notes. And we can do combinations of strumming and picking melodies. And here's a song that you might know. She'll be coming around the mountain. She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes. She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes. She'll be coming round the mountain. She'll be coming round the mountain. She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes. And we can just strum chords. Or we can pick some melody notes in there. We can pretend we're a bass. And the mountain when she comes. And so the guitar can be played in different ways, and so it's a very versatile instrument, one of the more common instruments. And next we're going to pick up our friend the banjo. And this banjo is what we call the open back banjo, as opposed to the banjos that have the great big hubcap looking back on it that we call the bluegrass banjo. But this is Appalachian music, not bluegrass instruments. And so we typically play this banjo in the claw hammer style, where I hold my hand in the form of a claw, like a bear claw. And I'm playing all my music with just one finger and one thumb. in Appalachian music is a combination of chords and melody notes. That's our banjo friend. And let's see, moving along from the banjo, I'm going to reach behind the banjo and pull out our mandolin. Mandolin, you can count up here at the head of the instrument. We've got 8 tuning pegs, which means there's 8 strings, but if you look really closely, you can see that the strings are close together in pairs. And so we actually only play it as 4 strings, but we get the drone sound of 8 strings. For example, if I pick just one of these small strings, it's one note, but if I do both of them together, we get a nice ringing sound. So here's what the mandolin would sound like. So I'm going to show you in just a moment how this instrument, the mandolin, is similar to the violin fiddle. Another thing that the mandolin does is it can be also kind of like a percussion instrument. We call it chopping. And so it kind of keeps a backup tempo, kind of like a drum does. And so in essence, the mandolin can be both a melodic instrument playing melodies, or it can be a percussion keeping, like for keeping time or for a dance, things like that. Let me reach over here now and pick up our violin fiddle. And some of you might be interested to know, well, what's the difference in a violin and a fiddle? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One of the reasons you can tell if you're playing a violin is if you're wearing black patent leather shoes. That usually comes with a violin. If you're wearing a pair of work boots, it's a fiddle. Another way that you can tell the difference in the two is that the violin will have strings and a fiddle is going to have strings. And that's probably going to get a laugh from some of you out there, but it's true. Playing the fiddle takes a lot of, trying to think of the word. I can't think of that word now, but I think you're going to understand. So here's how the fiddle would sound. Oh, and it's tuned the same as the mandolin. It's the same size of a mandolin. We put our fingers in the same places as the mandolin, but we generally only play one string at a time, and we've got this thing they call the bow. And the bow slides across the strings, and we try to make nice, pretty sounds with it. I'm not a fiddle player, but I can mess around with it a little bit. Here's a tune that I played on the mandolin. I played on the fiddle. was the fiddle playing one note at a time. There is also a technique with the fiddle that's called double stops, when I can play two strings at once, and it has a totally different sound. That was a little awkward there at the end, but you get the idea. The single melody notes versus the double stops that has more of a drone. So that's our violin fiddle. Work boots or patent leather shoes, if you wanted to call it a violin. It's really the same instrument. It's just the way that you play it. Old-time traditional Appalachian music usually has a little bit more accepted leeway in how accurate the notes are. But again, we want all of our notes to be accurate. We'll see what we're going to do. Oh, now, this instrument is called a lap dulcimer. Dulcimer is a Latin word for sweet music. Dulce means sweet. Mer is Latin for music, dulcimer. And if you look very closely on this one, you might can see that I have on the top here, I've got two strings that are close together like the mandolin. They're played as one string, then one string in the middle, and a string at the bottom. So it's really played as three strings, even though it has four. And if you look at the neck of it, you can see that there's spaces where the frets are. On a guitar, if you look at it, I've got them kind of like evenly spaced. But on the dulcimer, it looked like some of them are missing. And the reasons that some of them appear to be missing is that the makers of the dulcimers actually took out frets that took out some of the, I want to say, bad notes, or the notes that don't sound good with other notes. And it's true, they really did. And when they did that, it kind of handicapped the instrument a little bit so that it's not able to play in every key easily because it doesn't have all the notes available to make all the different chords. Generally, typically, these instruments are played in the key of D and the key of G, although there are some people who are very accomplished with it and they can play in almost every kind of key. They do make capos, and they do have dulcimers that have some extra frets installed in it. But one of the fun things about the dulcimer is that you can actually start playing it and get good sounding music without actually knowing more than strumming, and so that's a mountain lap dulcimer. Lap dulcimer because it lays on your lap. There are other types of dulcimers, but they're not typically found in our mountain homes. And so I'm going to lay that down there now, and I'm going to pull out what we call the auto harp. Some of you probably know that a harp is the instruments where the people sit behind it and they pull their fingers across the strings and then they make their music that way. And they have to pick out exactly which strings they're going to make the chords with their fingers. It's like you're reaching inside of a piano and just plucking strings. Well, just imagine as if these strings, and each one of these little pegs around here is attached to a string. There's a lot of strings on this thing. A lot of strings. And that's just like reaching in the back of a piano and running your fingers over the strings. But on this section of the auto harp, I've got keys that I can press down, and you might be able to see that these keys are labeled with names of chords. And if you look through the back, you can see that each one of these little bars that we press down have little pads underneath that will stop some of the strings and let other strings ring clear. That's what gives us the selection of the right strings that we're going to hear. And so to play this, I reach around with one arm and I keep my strumming arm up here. And if I wanted to play, for example, a G chord, I'd press the key that says G. And then if I wanted to play a C chord, I'd press the key that's called C. Then if I wanted to play a D chord, I press the key that says D. And then I go back to my G. And so to play this instrument, all you really got to do is know the tempo to strum with your right hand and which keys to hit with your left hand. You don't have to do the fingering of your left hand to actually select the strings that's going to be played at which fret of the instrument, like a guitar or the banjo, or where to put your fingers on the neck of a violin. And these buttons do that work for you. So this is called the auto harp, made very famous by the Carter family from Southwest Virginia. They used auto harps in a lot of their songs. Let me put this down and see what else we've got. Oh, one thing that was pretty common in the family was our friend harmonica. Harmonicas were relatively inexpensive. They were sold at the local store, and the local store usually was a store that sold everything from clothes and food and little extra pleasures like harmonicas. And we just simply blow into it. There's holes in the back of it. Yeah. And these are so small they could be carried around in a pocket or a purse. And whenever the mood hits, just take it out. Harmonica. And let's see, I've got one more to do for us. Oh, you see this big thing right here? This is our bass. And it's actually in a stand or it would fall over. But this is the instrument that keeps the tempo of the songs. It keeps it gives an underlying deep resonance sound to help the band understand what chords are being played. And we can play it with our fingers. Or we can use We got a bow for the bass also. When we start using the bow on the bass, it sounds really pretty. We just, we don't get to hear people playing the bass with the bow very often. We're used to hearing it just played. That's the bass. It's called sometimes a double bass. Sometimes it's called the upright bass. Sometimes it's called the doghouse bass. But it's the big instrument of our typical instruments that we'll find in Appalachian music. So this is just an example of what I consider to be the typical instruments we'll find in the Appalachian music. I'm going to make another video, and it'll be the non-traditional instruments, things that you didn't usually see, but they made the music sound nice, and they were sometimes just constructed of things we find around the house. So look for that at another video. For now, my name is Perry from Tellico Plains. Bye.